Testing. Da 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 da. Da, 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 da. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Empower You. We're so glad to have you tonight. And for all the people that made one of the gosh darn best potluck dinners I've ever seen, let's give you guys a round of applause. For all of those of you who are online tonight, and there's a bunch of you, sorry you missed it, but boy, a little bit more for us, right? So Empower You, we're so glad to have you. The mission of Empower You is to just teach free classes to help you get more empowered in your life. And that could be from anything from providing you education like we did the other night about the history of the Cincinnati frontier and the Convention of States, to getting you engaged in important subjects like we're going to hear about tonight with the Great Reset, to going out and just having a little fun. And the fun part of the potluck was really, really fantastic. So thank you so much for helping out. We are a free university here, and so what that means is, if when we pass the red buckets, if you can contribute a buck or two to help us out, we'd really appreciate it. All the contributions tonight are being split with our incredible co-sponsor tonight, the Westchester Tea Party. And we're so glad to have them here tonight. And I know that the president of the Westchester Tea Party wasn't feeling well tonight. That's Pam. And in case she happens to be online, I don't know if we are, can we give her a rah-rah? Pam, we're sorry to miss you. Glad to have you. And what about first time? Nita, could you help me out? Do we have any first time visitors to Empower You tonight? Any first time visitors? Come on up, Nita, and you can help me. We've got a special prize. Come on up. Come on up. Yeah, you. Keep your hand raised. If it's your first time, you're going to pass those out to the people that have their hand raised. I want you to go give them to them. And these are special kind of. Pardon me. These are special, and stay with me, everyone. These are special empowerment pills. The white ones are if you're just a little tired. The pink ones, if you want to feel empowered and take on the world. So pass them all out, get rid of them. Yeah. That's it. So let's give a round of applause to our first time visitors. We're glad to have you here tonight. So okay, so I wanted to introduce you to our great team. Nita. Hold it down. I want to introduce you to our great team. So I've been a little kind of had this little knee thing for the last week or so, and I've been watching the TV a lot. Are any of you watching this Johnny Depp trial at all? It is the most incredible thing in the entire world. You got to watch it. And I wanted to start out by introducing you to our team with our great treasurer. And when I was watching this trial today, when I didn't have anything else I could do, they had an accountant on who was Johnny Depp's accountant. And he explained that he charged Johnny $710 an hour to keep track of his finances for him. And I'm just so appreciative to our treasurer, Bill Roll, that he doesn't charge us $710 an hour. He's the greatest guy in the world. We've got a lot of bored people here. You got to watch that trial, though. It is the most interesting thing you could ever see. They both deserve to lose, right? Let me explain the rest of our team to you. We've got Jay Grunke, who's on the board tonight. Let's give Jay a round of applause. We've got board members Joe Platt, Barb Horwitz, Leah Cagle. Let's thank them. Raise your hand, you guys. And Ken Bowman is here somewhere too. Ken Bowman, raise your hand. Thank you very much. And am I missing anybody? I hope not. So thanks to all our great team members tonight. I've got a required reading article for you. You can pick up on your way out. And I know we've got another one of these too. This was an incredibly bad article in the Wall Street Journal about what the Biden administration is trying to do to all charter schools across the entire United States, and how they're really trying to certify them and defund them from getting any money or any benefits. It's as much as we've talked about school choice this year at Empower You. This is a really important article. You can pick it up when you leave tonight, or for those of you online, there's a link online that you can take a look at. So tonight we've got a couple speakers that are going to tell us about what they're up to, just to kind of fill you in the loop. The first one I met last week, Jeremy Irwin from Americans for Prosperity, which is a great group that Empower You has worked with for several years now. Jeremy is the grassroots director, and I'm going to ask him to come up. He's going to tell you a little bit about what they do. Give him a round of applause.
Thank you, Dan. What an amazing group. I feel really blessed to be here tonight. So thank you all for having me. Thank you, Dan. And thank you, Empower You. So how many of you have heard of Americans for Prosperity before? So quite a few of you. For those of you who don't know, Americans for Prosperity started in 2004. Our founder is Charles Koch, who's of Koch Industries, one of the Koch brothers. But his vision, he started off sort of funding partisan politics, right? So you would go to DC and meet with legislators and talk to them about reducing red tape and regulation, lowering taxes, stop crazy spending in DC and things like that. Things that would help everyday Americans. But he found by funding these politicians in DC and talking to these people, like nothing ever got done, right? So as we know in Washington, doesn't happen. So he created his own grassroots organization. And sort of our North Star is those principles around the Declaration of Independence, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So anything that we work on policy-wise, whether it's school choice or eliminating the state income tax here in Ohio, or our personal option for healthcare. It's all around the North Star of we believe in people, and people make better decisions than politicians in DC or in our state government. So, and just a little bit about me. So I'm originally my wife and I are originally from Kentucky. We've been in DC for the last 6 years. I've been living in the swamp. And I've been working on healthcare policy for nonprofit. And once it's nonprofit, started asking me to do things that were against my values, advocate for, single payer healthcare and things like that, which just didn't, sit right with me. So I decided to leave there and was blessed to find this opportunity with Americans for Prosperity, get me closer to family in Kentucky and being the good people in Ohio. So we're working on great policy here in Ohio. Like I mentioned, school choice, personal option for healthcare. We want to eliminate the state income tax here. So we're doing a lot of great things, but we are a grassroots organization. We're in 36 states. We have a couple million volunteers, but here in Cincinnati, we're sort of new. We haven't been here for several years. So we're trying to grow that grassroots army. The more volunteers and support we have, the more we can get things done. So that's just a little bit about me. Some of the things that we're working on is right now we're trying to shine a light on these reckless government policy, these crazy policies that the Biden administration is doing, whether it's the reckless spending that they're doing and just crazy printing of money that's crazy, causing this crazy inflation. I think an average American's going to lose at least $5,000 to $6,000 this year, taken out of their pocket because of the rising gas and groceries and all that. So we're trying to shine a light on that and talk about better policies. Reduce government spending, reduce regulation, red tape, empowering businesses, and tapping into Americans' abundance of energy. So if you all know anybody who owns a gas station or a convenience store or a restaurant that's being affected by inflation, maybe please come see me afterward, or my card is on the table in the back, as we have some ideas and some media things we want to do to shine a light on what's going on. Also, we are working on school choice, whether it's through the backpack bill or another avenue. We want to see parents empowered to make better choice, be able to make choices for their child and where their child wants to go to school. So we're looking to partner with different private schools to educate the public on school choice. So if you have any connections that you need private schools in the area that might want to partner with us to do a backpack bill program, just to educate the public on why we need school choice, then please let me know and just come see me, or again, get my card back there. So that's just some of the things that we're working on right now. Also, to get better policy, we need better politicians in office. We got the election coming up. We have endorsed Representative Steve Shabbat. We think he's been a great supporter of American ideals and free enterprise. So we have endorsed him. We will be going knocking on doors, making phone calls. We'll both need lots of volunteers, and we're also hiring some part-time people. So whether if you want to volunteer to knock doors and make phone calls for Shabbat, so we can make sure to get him elected and that seat doesn't go to the progressive left, just let me know. But sorry, I think I took too much time, but thank you all for having me.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate you introducing yourself. I know Jeremy has a few positions he's offering too. Hey, Jay, can we throw those pictures up on the screen? So we did a giveaway the class before Easter, and we gave away an Easter decorating kit. And isn't that something? That is Alexa, Alana, and Alora, who are doing the decorating. What do you guys think? They did pretty good, didn't they? And that's Pat and Joanne who helped them through that. Sheriff Peterson, one of the great leaders of the Westchester Tea Party, is going to come up and say a few words. Sheriff.
Well, thank you very much. Pam is the chair and I'm the co-chair. So let me tell you about the three people that are here for our Westchester Tea Party board right now. Betty Dassenbeck, she's our secretary and also the receptionist, completely registered. And then we also have Tony Kruger back there, where are you, Tony? He's a treasurer. There you are. Okay. And Jerry Dukowski came and she's been helping me with the food and everything. Okay. Thank you for being here. The rest of them couldn't make it. Word about the fact that we meet at the St. Gertrude the Great Church on Rialto Road near 747 in Westchester. And our great Bishop Dolan, who's been so kind to us and just really loves us, I think, and we loved him. And he passed away on Tuesday. Any of you maybe don't know that, but it's really just heart-wrenching because he was so full of knowledge and wise and had a great sense of humor. He was just really, you couldn't find a better man. So just to tell you that the wake for him is that there's a low mass on Tuesday starting at 4, I think it's at 5 or 6 actually maybe. And then there's the next morning, it's about 11 o'clock, I think, isn't it? 11 for the high mass, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure you can find out information because he was really well known. He was, not really a follower of Pope Francis. So he knew everything. I mean, the guy was just incredible. So we're going to miss him terribly. And I hope we're going to be able to continue to meet there. I have 2 cards that Bob Bruns, who comes to our meetings, gave to me this evening. He's got them stamped and he's got one of them addressed and he's put his name on one of them. If anybody wants to sign on to this, and I'll send it in the mail, that would be great. I mean, afterwards, you certainly can if you, go to the church, with our tea party, you care to sign. Thank you. And then the other thing I wanted to say was there's a paper back there that I really want you to take. If you haven't taken it, please do. It's called The World Health Organization is Attempting a Power Grab. Now, if any of you ever follow Leo Hohmann, HOHMANN.com. He's terrific. He has an article all the time. He puts them out almost weekly, I think, about what's going on. And he's just really knows what's happening. Talking about World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, and everything. So this is a new thing that I hadn't heard, and maybe some of you are privy to this, but there's the International Health Regulations. It's IHR. The United States has been in since 2005 under George W. Bush. And these just take away our rights in our Constitution. And on January of 28th, this year, they came up with, the Biden administration came up with 13 amendments that they're going to try to get this through, a part of this regulations. They're in Geneva, Switzerland, a month from now, May 23rd through 28th. So it's coming up in 4 weeks or what. And it's just terrible because what they're going to do, if they pass this, there's 192 nations, but I think there's like 25 of them that are going to be doing the voting on it, maybe. And you can read about this. The website is don'tyoudare.info, like information. So don'tyoudare.info. And really, please go to that. Please go to Leo Hohmann, and this is his latest article, Hohmann, and it's on here. It's on the bottom of this paper. So, and I don't know, I guess you copied up. They did this for me tonight because I didn't bring them. We copied them off. Anyway, in the back on, if you've seen this on John Adams, who wants to be Secretary of State in Ohio, the difference between him and LaRose, you need to look at that too. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. This decorated, well-dressed woman has just a minute she wants to tell you about her outfit.
And when I see you start coming towards me, I know it's done. Ms. Anatomy lesson. This was very quickly last summer, King's School Board meeting, when I found out that 2 girls were a king and a queen, and I had to let everyone know that a queen is a girl with a vagina and a king is a boy with testicles and penis. I was the only one in the room that did not have a mask on, and you could still hear them go, as soon as I said the word vagina, it was like, oh my God. So I am now Ms. Anatomy lesson because they don't understand the concept of king and queen.
Let's give Miss Anatomy lesson a round of applause. She also is quite an incredible activist whose name is Deb. So I wanted to introduce you to our executive director of Empower You, Betty Overstreet. And I really want to thank Betty for a great semester. I forgot to say hi, have you say hi to John, who's on our board back there, John O'Neill. Give him a round of applause. We've had just an incredible semester, and Betty has handled so many of these classes herself, and she takes them so personally. And there's one kind of class she just loves, and that's classes on the military, on the wars, on our great veterans who have done so much for us. How many veterans, who do we have for veterans in here? Raise your hand if you are one. Let's give them a round of applause, everybody. And we just had a incredible class about a week and a half ago when Stuart Scheller, the colonel from Afghanistan, came in. And at the end of the class, I said, Betty, would you like to get your picture taken with him? And I think it turned out pretty good. So let's give Betty a round of applause. This is for you, Betty. Thank you. We've got a couple giveaways we're going to give away, and then we have got a great show tonight. So we're going to give away two prizes online tonight. And the first winner online will be for the actual Great Reset book from Glenn Beck, if it ever gets printed. It's on the way here, and that goes to Jean B. So let's give Jean B a round of applause, everybody. And then the second giveaway, which is a new book I saw, The Race to the Bottom, Uncovering the Secret Forges Destroying American Public Education, from Luke Rosiak. Maybe a few of you have seen that. That goes to Peggy S. Let's give her a round of applause. And then let's go ahead and we have a copy of The Great Reset, and that's going to go to, get your tickets out, everybody. And that is number 365. 365, right there. Come on up. And then we also have, gosh, 4, we'll have to get that to you when it gets here. Thank you very much. We've also got one of Tom's books, The Activist's Handbook, right here. And keep your tickets out, and that will go to, thank you so much, Tom, for donating that. Number 406. Number 406, right there, Georgia. Thank you so much, Georgia. And with that in mind, I am going to turn everything over to our great executive director, Betty Overstreet. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for the picture too. I've got plenty of wall space for that. This is Tom DeWeese's second time back with us. He was here a year ago, just about the same time. Tom is one of the nation's leading advocates of individual liberty, free enterprise, private property rights, and American sovereignty and independence. Tom DeWeese was one of the first to voice concern over the radical agenda of the environmental movement and to question its motives. Tom is a native of Ohio. He's been a candidate for the Ohio legislature, served as editor of 2 newspapers, and has owned several businesses. In 1989, Tom led the only privately funded election observation team to the Panamanian elections. In 2006, Tom was invited to Cambridge University to debate the issue of the United Nations before the Cambridge Union, a 200-year-old debating society. Today, he serves as founder and president of the American Policy Center and editor of the DeWeese Report and author of 3 books. Now Tell Me I Was Wrong, Erase, a fictional political thriller, and his most recently policy book entitled Sustainable: The War on Free Enterprise, Private Property, and Individuals. Most recently, Tom launched an online video news outlet that is called Catching Fire News and features programs no other network will dare to air. The first program that launched was called When COVID Meets Climate Change. Some others are Cities for All, and that means you. Securing the Vote is our top priority. And the one that came in my email today is So You Think School Choice Will Save You. I don't know if Tom was going to mention this tonight, but I get the video news and I thought it was something you might be interested in. So I'll let Tom tell you how you can be a subscriber to that. Please give Tom a welcome.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you very much. And thank all of you for being here tonight. Just thrilled to see all of you here and to learn. I'm going to talk very fast tonight because I've got a lot to tell you. I want to make sure there's time for you to ask some questions. The Catching Fire News, brand new, and we've got 5 hosts already, and we've done, I don't know how many shows we've done so far, but we are starting to really get some people online and following it. And you can see it at catchingfire.news is the website for it. And for those of you at home, things I'm going to talk about tonight, we've got our books and stuff here tonight, and you can get those at our website at americanpolicy.org. So we got a pile of information to help. We've been working really hard to get tools to help people to fight back. This is my mission, is to help organize across the country, to help people in a local level to organize and fight back and stop what is happening with us. And it's what I call building a freedom pod, and it's starting to take hold. And but tonight, my topic is the Great Reset. The Great Reset is a massive plan to completely reorganize the entire structure of the planet and to economically, socially, environmentally, politically, nothing will be untouched by this plan. Global governance is the goal. That's the purpose of the whole thing. Now, obviously, as I said, I don't have enough time to tell you everything there is about the full history of this and how it's being developed and all the players that are involved and every single detail on how it's going to be imposed. But I want to give you enough detail to know where it came from, and most importantly, how it will directly affect you. Now, first, let me give you some, just a small taste of the background leading up to this and the Great Reset. Now, I know many of you may have already heard me speak on a lot of this, but I need to get everything into perspective. So I want to pull it all together so you fully understand what we're up against. The first step, as they began to create this global mission that they're putting together, the first step was to create what I call a diabolical plan for control that would get us all to fall into line, and they would prefer that you do it voluntarily. And you know, always in the past, when forces wanted to rule the world, what did they do? They put armies together and they invaded and they attacked and they killed people and they broke things and they subjugated people. These guys, the reason I say this is diabolical, they came up with a plan that really literally will get you, and people already are, voluntarily giving up their liberties. What could be such a powerful message to get people to do that? Fear. That was the weapon. Now, what they came up with is the fear of environmental Armageddon. I have had environmentalists get into my face and say, it doesn't matter how many rights you think you have. If you don't have a planet to stand on, good gracious, man, learn something. Yeah, I have. Under such a threat, people have been frightened into voluntarily giving up those liberties. Climate change became the mantra, the weapon to combat such a threat. What they're using is called sustainable development. Every time you hear the word sustainable development, understand that is somebody who is pushing for power over you. It has absolutely nothing to do with protecting the environment. Climate change. The Club of Rome, one of the globalist organizations that works directly with the United Nations, back about 30 years ago, they did a report, and this is what they said in that report. In searching for a new enemy to unite us, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine, and the like would fit the bill. All of these dangers are caused by human intervention, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. Once they put that out, the goal was set. Then, in 1992, the UN held the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. 50,000 delegates attended this conference. This was not a picnic on the beach. They had a mission. They had something very serious that they were going to put together. They had 179 heads of state there, including George H.W. Bush. Also, including all that among the diplomats, were thousands of independent, private, non-governmental organizations, these NGOs, who brought their own agendas and their ideas for fulfilling the whole goal. Introduced at that event and approved by all of those in attendance was a document that became known as Agenda 21. Now, every time I mention that in certain circles, the eyes roll, the mainstream conservative movement in Washington, D.C. to this day will still not say those words. The UN described this document as a, quote, comprehensive blueprint for the reorganization of human society. Think about the power behind that statement. Now, as the plan was introduced to the delegates, the chairman of the Earth Summit, Maurice Strong, said this, quote, current lifestyles and consumption patterns of the affluent middle class involving high meat intake, use of fossil fuels, appliances, and air conditioning and suburban housing are not sustainable. Every single one of those vital pieces to our culture, to our society, is under attack today. You think they meant it in 1992? Strong then summed up with his address by saying this: isn't the only hope for the planet that the industrialized nations collapse? Isn't it our responsibility to bring that about? This is the diabolical, sick mind that we are up against, and you're fighting it in your city councils as well as our federal government and on the global level. Continuing to build on that message, Al Gore said, We must go through a wrenching transformation to rid us of the horrors of the 20th century industrial revolution. You remember those horrors: indoor plumbing, electricity in the house, our own private transportation. Oh, the horror of it. People living longer, better medicine. Sustainable development is the action plan to impose Agenda 21 policies. In reality, it is a trigger word designed to get you to voluntarily surrender your liberties, to fully understand what a massive threat this is to everything in your life. The very best description of sustainable development that I have ever heard was given by an old friend of mine, Rosa Corey, who was a liberal Democrat, and she created Democrats Against Agenda 21. Unfortunately, last year, Rosa passed away, but she was a fierce voice. They didn't know what to do with her. A Democrat, fighting us? But here's what she said Agenda 21 is, or sustainable development. She said, sustainable development is this action plan to inventory and control all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all means of production, all information, all energy, and all human beings in the world. Inventory and control. That is what it is. Every time, as I said, you hear the word sustainable, understand that it has nothing to do with protecting the environment. It's the actual blueprint to subvert our current government into a global control. And so, with Agenda 21, they were on their way toward the goal to reorganize human society. Next, in 2015, the second part of the agenda was put in place. This time, it came with 17 different goals. As they go along, they get more detailed. When Agenda 21 was there, they kept using all this innocent-sounding language. We just want to help the environment. As they move forward, they get into more detail, and you find out it has nothing to do with the environment. This second plan was called Agenda 2030. The preamble to this plan, as they released it, said, quote, all countries and all stakeholders are those NGOs, not you. When they talk about stakeholders in your city council, they're not talking about you. They're talking about these carpetbaggers that don't even belong there. But that is part of their whole force, stakeholders. All stakeholders acting in collaborative partnership will implement this plan. And it goes on to say, we are determined to take the bold and transformative steps which are urgently needed to shift the world into a sustainable and resilient path. Then, Christiana Figueres, the executive secretary of the UN's framework on climate change and the person in charge of making sure this all happens, said this: this is the first time in the history of mankind that we are setting ourselves the task of intentionally, within a defined period of time, to change the economic development model that has been reigning for at least 150 years since the Industrial Revolution. There it is again. Now, you know what's amazing? They've attacked me over and over again that I'm a conspiracy theorist and I'm spreading lies and hate and so forth. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not clever enough to make this stuff up. All I have ever done is quote them. And then they tell me I'm nuts. But next, in 2017, the Green New Deal. While sold as an environmental protection plan, most of its policies have nothing to do with the environment. It deals with jobs, medical care, tuition-free education, housing, all these things you're hearing in the news today. If you read the Green New Deal, you'll see them all in there. Of course, it also calls for redirecting investment into wind and solar, away from fossil fuels, enforce sustainable agriculture and forestry. But most disturbing are its plans to create a public-owned banks that function as a nonprofit utility. It'll get worse. The Green New Deal also calls for the creation of a corporation for economic democracy, a new federal corporation to provide publicity, training, education, and direct financing for cooperative development, for reforms to make government agencies, private associations, and business enterprises more participatory. The first target to changing human society is to cancel our culture. Change the language, call any thought contrary to the agenda hate speech, control freedom of movement, erase history in our books that present positions contrary to the globally acceptable truth, forced compliance. It's one economic pot, one sanction, thought process. That's it. Now, who are the forces behind all of this? As I've warned for many years, their official term is, as I said, non-governmental organizations or NGOs. There are actually about 20,000 of them worldwide, most working directly with the United Nations, World Economic Forum, World Health Organization, and the Council on Foreign Relations operating in the background. They have a combined annual revenue of about $46 billion. Now compare that to the members to our conservative movement defending liberty. We have about 1,000 organizations with a combined annual revenue of about $8 billion. That's why you see their policies everywhere and barely see ours. Here is a small example of these NGOs. You've heard of them: the Nature Conservancy, the Sierra Club, the Audubon Society, Pew Charitable Trust, the Rockefeller Foundation, Ford Foundation, Packard, Merck, Heinz, MacArthur Foundation, the National Resources Defense Council, the Environmental Defense Fund. These guys, what they do is all file lawsuits constantly to give any business, anybody who stands up against their policies, all kinds of grief. The World Wildlife Fund, the largest of them all. And by the way, today, the World Wildlife Fund controls the American beef industry. And believe it or not, I mean, this is an organization that said one of the ways to save the planet is to stop consumption of beef. The National Council, or the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, is helping them do it. I've been fighting that battle for a while. I've got on Catching Fire News. I just did an interview with Bill Bullard of an organization called RCAF, one of the only beef supporting organizations working to save them. And so you can learn a lot about it on that interview. Not counted as leftist organizations, but helping implement these plans just the same are groups like the National Association of Realtors and even the Chamber of Commerce, among others. As I mentioned, the National Cattlemen's Beef Association is one of them. Together, these forces make up the radical movement dedicated to enforcing the reorganization of society through such policies as, you've heard these, smart growth, national heritage areas, climate change, and critical race theory. And of course, these are the policies behind the destruction of our energy industry, the assault on our personal transportation choices, housing and private property, and the attack on the entire farming industry. We are losing farmers and beef growers and so forth by the thousands, and we are losing farmland by the thousands, if not millions of acres. What do they expect to happen from that? And the total indoctrination of our children in the classrooms. A child is born as a blank slate, and what is poured into their minds is what they turn into. And they know it, and they're grabbing them as early as kindergarten now. Each of these plans are the same agenda. All have come with a specific date to completion. But here's an interesting fact. Even with those massive forces, none of them have actually achieved their goal. We have slowed them down. We have held them back to a certain extent. I know it doesn't feel that way, but we have. That's why they keep coming up with another 10-year plan and another 10-year plan. You know, the Soviets used to have a 5-year plan every 5 years. These guys have a 10-year plan. They never once have achieved a single one of them. None of the fear that they have put out there of climate change and so forth has ever come true. There are no islands that have been sucked up. There are no cities underwater. None of that. None of these things have happened. So they come up with another 10-year plan, and they're doing it again. One lesson is that the issue of climate change was one of the things we've learned. The climate change issue was starting to lose the ability to spread fear because people were starting to get it. And what I can say about that is they did a poll of you, and they said, what is the most important issue and issues that you think you face? Give 5 or 6 issues or whatever. If climate change was on the list, it was dead last. This began to cause some great concern because what a great tool this was to scare you to death. What plane don't have a planet to stand on? Oh my goodness. Well, enter the COVID pandemic, followed by the Great Reset. In both 2018 and 2019, Klaus Schwab's World Economic Forum took part in 2 simulations of a national and an international pandemic response. In 2018, the simulation ended with a simulated news report that said, without effective vaccines, experts tell us that we could eventually see 30 to 40 million deaths in the US and more than 900 million around the world. Clearly, they were preparing for a global pandemic to build towards. Then in 2019, World Economic Forum collaborated with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for Event 201, which simulated an international response. This was 2 months before the actual COVID outbreak. Add to that the fact that Fauci said in 2017 that Donald Trump was going to face a surprise pandemic. Golly gee. Then it actually happened in 2020. For the first, the world was shut down because of a pandemic. Take note that through the lockdowns, almost all of the 2030 Agenda 2030 goals were at least temporarily kind of accomplished in a single day. They locked it all down. That was temporary, but they were testing how to keep it going. Once again, fear pushed the charge that the pandemic was caused by man's destruction of the environment. And now there is a warning of annual pandemics because of climate change and human environmental damage if you don't get control of it. In 2020, at the outset of COVID, the media began to spin sustainable development as the only means with which to live in a post-COVID-19 world. The pandemic and its lockdowns were a practice run. The proof of that is in their own words, all written down for us in a best-selling book, COVID-19 and the Great Reset. Klaus Schwab wrote this. Now, here's an interesting thing to know about this book. He tells us that this book was written to tell us everything we had learned by the lockdowns about how we should run our countries and how we could get rid of climate change and save us all. It's interesting that the lockdown started in March of 2020, and this piece of crap was on the boards, on the shelves in August of 2020. How much did he learn in those 5 months? I've written 3 books. The one thing I do know is, first of all, you got to come up with a concept, then you got to do the research, then you actually have to write it, then you got to find a printer and a publisher and get it on the shelves. This book was written before the pandemic. I absolutely guarantee you. So, now Schwab, in this book, what he's written is the updated comprehensive blueprint for the reorganization of human society. Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, Green New Deal, and Great Reset are all exactly the same plan. Schwab breaks it down in the Great Reset into 3 parts. 1, interdependence. 2, velocity. 3, complexity. Interdependence, this is his words, An interdependent world is a world of deep systemic connectivity in which all risks affect each other through a web of complex interactions. So it matters what you do tonight, what kind of food you eat, how you use your heating, how much you use on that, whether you drive, how far you drive. All those things are interconnected to affect me and all of you. That's what he means. He said these include economic and geopolitical, social, environmental, and technological. Infectious diseases risk is bound to have a direct effect on global governance failure, on the infectious diseases having an impact on global governance failure. Get that. And our social instability, our unemployment, fiscal crisis, and involuntary migration. Velocity, and again, these are his words. In today's world, everything moves faster than before. If just one thing were to be singled out to explain this astonishing increase in velocity, it would undoubtedly be the internet. And now we're moving towards everything is online. Everything about you, your money, your products that you buy, everything is online. Because we can see velocity everywhere, whether it's a crisis, a social discontent, technological developments and adoption, geopolitical upheaval, the financial markets, and of course, the manifestation of infectious diseases. It also has to do with somebody buying Twitter. Velocity, complexity. In the simplest form, these are his words, in its simplest form, complexity can be defined as what we don't understand or find difficult to understand. What he means is, you aren't smart enough to lead your life in a proper way. We need experts from the top to interpret and guide us through all of these fast-moving changes. Now, how do they put all that in place to change the world? Well, Bill Gates said of the COVID lockdown, quote, simply shutting down the economy is not going to get us to our goal. So just like we need innovation for COVID-19, we also need to get rid of emissions from all the different sectors and bring down climate change. This crosses many areas: transportation, industry, electricity, all those things, and agriculture contribute to emissions. Now, Schwab lamented that the massive lockdowns where we shut down the world economy. You were stuck in your homes. You couldn't drive. You had to cut back on your food. You had to cut back on everything else. But all of that only cut back the emissions that have to be stopped for climate change by 8%. Well, that's not enough. So Schwab said, quote, considering the severity of the lockdowns, that 8% figure looks rather disappointing. It seems to suggest that small industrialized actions, consuming much less, not using our cars and not flying, are of little significance when compared to the size of emissions generated by electricity, agriculture, and industry, the big ticket emitters. This is the warning, ladies and gentlemen. They're telling you straight out. Even though they managed to lock down the entire economy of the world, according to the global forces, it had no significant effect on the carbon emissions causing global warming, and they insist much more must be done. Schwab defines the Great Reset as a means of addressing the weaknesses of capitalism that were purportedly exposed by the COVID pandemic. He wrote, quote, no industry or business will be spared from the impact of these challenges. Millions of companies risk disappearing and many industries face an uncertain future. A few will thrive. Oh, I bet Bill Gates does. all over. He owns more land. He owns more land, farmland in America than anybody else. And he is pushing to get rid of beef and to have it all, the fake beef that's, you know, some weeds and some things over here, and all done in a plant somewhere to do all that. So Schwab wrote, within a year, now first of all, understand, how do they get this done? They attack Wall Street. This is number one, to go after Wall Street. So Schwab said, within a year, 77% of institutional investors intend to stop buying into companies that aren't in some way sustainable. If it's not done by following sustainable rules, it will not be financed. Now watch the advertising you see on television. My favorite example of this is one of the top 2 toilet paper brands that says now on the front of their packaging that for every 1,000 tree or every million trees that are cut down to make this product, we replant 3 million. We're sustainable. Isn't that wonderful? You know, the bears are happy. Yeah. Money managers in Wall Street are now saying climate change is their main concern. This would well be a $120 trillion transformation of investment money away from oil and gas to electric vehicles and even the way we think of car ownership altogether. Will you even be allowed to own one? Perhaps you will be forced to into public transportation. This new sustainable investment drive will affect the $5 trillion global transportation industry, the $9 trillion healthcare industry, the $850 billion airline industry, the $600 billion exports industry, and the $26 billion food delivery industry. Companies will have to report their climate information to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, for a climate risk assessment. Biden has already ordered the SEC to require public trading companies to not only calculate their own greenhouse emissions, but those of their suppliers, their customers, and their logistics operatives. Every company will be affected. In anticipation of this, it's a 506-page report from the SEC. Accounting firms have been hiring thousands of new employees to prepare for the coming onslaught of climate change financial paperwork to be forced into public companies. Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, and the Bank of America are already working on these policies. MasterCard is preparing a carbon limit credit card that quantifies the CO2 emissions generated from each transaction of what you buy. The card comes with a monthly CO2 limit and will shut down charges if you exceed it. It's now being prepared to use as a weapon to force your compliance to the Great Reset. And as usual, it's all hidden under the labels of climate change, environmental correctness, and sustainable. And here's a few examples of how it's being put into place. We've already experienced the effects of the Biden shutting down the nation's oil supply in the name of climate change. Next, the Biden regime issued an executive order to lock away massive amounts of land in the US, and the plan is called 30 by 30. Locking away 30% of all the land and resources by the year 2030. Actually, when you talk with them, you really look into their documents and so forth, they mean 50%. Next, thousands of acres of privately owned food-producing farmland in the Midwest Corn Belt have been targeted for a new 1,300-mile-long pipeline. Now, this is not a pipeline to bring us needed oil. No, the purpose of this is one to capture CO2 and transport it underground, all as an excuse to stop global warming. I have said over and over again, I have seen all of these plans over the years. This is the stupidest plan I've ever seen in my life. Environmentalists who pretend to know anything about the environment I have said over and over again, if they'd come out of their high rises in New York City and actually touch the ground, they might know something about the environment. Farmers do. Absolutely, they do. There is a possibility, I got a science report the other day, there is a possibility that combining, taking the CO2 out and the shortage of CO2 where plants can't grow, and the solar panels and the wind towers may be starting a new dust bowl. So right now, there are letters going out to targeted farmers in 5 states telling them of the coming Heartland Greenway. And they're asking them, gee, golly, we would really like you to voluntarily give up the land that's coming, this pipeline is coming straight through your land and you won't be able to grow any crops on where it is. We'd like you to voluntarily do that for us. But if you don't, we'll just take it by eminent domain. Nice guys, aren't they? So compassionate. In addition to taking the land out of food production, the plan calls for the establishment of 17 million acres of solar farms and 250 million acres of wind farms. Now, I'm about to go to Iowa, working with activists there, working to try to stop this. And one of the things I'm going to do while I'm there, we're going to take video cameras out and show underneath those solar panels. What do you find? Cement infrastructure. The land is destroyed underneath that. Need I talk about how if they have 250 million acres of wind towers, nothing will be flying. It is the most destruction to the environment they could possibly come up with, in the name of protecting the environment, of course. So, the American beef industry, as I mentioned, is now forced to comply to the rules of the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. These rules force expensive and unnecessary rules for growing beef, and as a result, we have lost thousands of beef producers and more attacks on our food supply. But they are not done. In the cities, a major effort is now underway to eliminate zoning protections for single-family neighborhoods. This is part of the Sustainable Smart Growth Plan to eliminate private property and put all of the everybody in the stack and pack high rises where our energy use and our transportation is fully controlled. They call it sustainable. How is one of the ways they do that? Get you off the rural areas, and now you're stuck in the cities where they control. And one of the reasons for that is they can now control your energy use. Smart meters. That's what they're for, is to control how much you can use. I have done radio interviews on this, and I've had people calling in where they've got smart meters on their property, and they're saying, we can't get our home warmer than 60 degrees in the wintertime, and we can't get it cooler than 80 or 90 degrees in the summertime, on and on and on. Plus, they can tell everything about your lifestyle. They can tell how many people live in your home. They can tell what you're doing in that home. Smart meters. Anybody comes to your house to put a smart meter on, bolt the door. And how about your personal choices in life? How will they be affected? How will you be forced to toe the line? You've witnessed the unrelenting drive for a completely digital lifestyle where everything about you is online, and from your bank accounts and all of the things that you purchase at the grocery to your posts on social media. How many of you have a little discount card for the grocery store that you use every time you go in? How many have it? It not only gets you a discount, it creates a file in everything you buy. Now, what is it that you're buying? Is it sustainable? Your buying habits. Add to that the kind of food that you buy, or what kind of, how to use a credit card if you, maybe you purchased a gun and ammunition. Oh, that will begin a personal profile on you. How much electricity do you use? Where have you traveled and how did you get there? How many buildings do you own? What kind of things do you invest in? Each of these things represents your climate footprint and your dedication to social justice. Are you a proper citizen for the reorganization of human society? Each of these things will be regularly entered into your profile, and each one will affect your personal credit rating. A low credit rating will prevent you from getting a loan, to buy a car, to obtain a mortgage, or even to get a business loan. This will effectively cut you out of society if you don't change your habits and your personal beliefs. You think? Yeah. This is just a sample of what will happen if the Great Reset is allowed to move forward. 81 international banks have joined in partnership with the World Bank, along with the International Monetary Fund and the US Federal Reserve, which oversee all the banks in the US, plus our money supply. Paper money will be replaced with digital currency that can disappear with a single keystroke. Make a bureaucrat mad, boom, got nothing. Universal income will finally make us all equal, equally poor, and under control of whatever gang is in charge on the government plantation. Perhaps you've heard the slogan about the Great Reset. Klaus Schwab has said, "No one will own anything and you'll be happy about it." What a wonderful world we're going to have. What does that mean? Well, Schwab goes on to call it a circular economy. Let me give you an example of what that means. A clothing store sells shirts because they have value. That's why they sell them. And they're needed, by society. We need a shirt. But in the circular economy, the clothing store will no longer sell them, they'll rent them to you. Then, when you return the shirts from renting it, the store will create a secondhand product to continue renting it out that way. A circular economy. Don't have to worry about owning all that stuff. The same will go for housing, furniture, appliances, and cars. Now, I'm not sure yet how they'll deal with things like toothpaste and toilet paper, but these are clever guys, and I'm sure they've got a plan for that too. Under the Great Reset, there will be no independent sovereign nations. That's the force behind the invasion of our borders, with illegals pouring over. There will be no democratic representation. All decisions will be handed down from the top, appointed regionalism to be the new representatives. If you've got regional plans in your area, tell your elected officials they are losing their power that you elected them to have. There will be no private property. All housing will be government rental property. This is the reason for the major rush to eliminate zoning protections for single-family homes. It's the first step. What they're doing in your communities, they're going in there and they're saying, here is one person, one family, 4 people living in this space. We can put 100 families in that spot, and we've got a housing crisis. We don't have a housing crisis. We have a government crisis. But this is the argument that they're using. Social equity will rule every decision. Corporate social responsibility. All corporations controlled from above. Beef consumption stopped. Farm practices and forced to comply with the strict rules. Net zero requirements will eliminate all sources of energy, but wind and except for wind and solar. So, what do we do? How do we stop it? Can we stop it? I know many of us feel very hopeless. I see people hanging their heads, looking down in defeat, and they're worried about this. I'm here to tell you, we can stop it. Freedom is too precious to just give up and walk away. The question is, will we just accept this is a done deal, or will we fight? The fact is, as I said, we can stop it. To our advantage, they have gotten arrogant and they have overstepped, revealing too much before everybody was fully indoctrinated and ready for it. As a result, many people are now becoming aware of the threat. They are actually looking to support in how we can fight back. The interesting thing is what's happening to the support of the people putting this in place. They are losing major support from normal constituencies. The Black community now, only 30% are supporting the Democrats. 26% of Hispanics are supporting them. All the ones they're counting on, and they're flooding us with these illegals coming in here. But you know what? A lot of those illegals that are coming here are trying to escape tyranny. And they're starting to figure it out. Some of them, not all of them, but some of them. Now, if more of this comes out, you want to see the border shut down real fast? These are opportunities, and we must jump on them and stop looking down in defeat. All of that work, it all works in our favor. And I've never been busier as I'm teaching people to fight back, especially on the local and the state level. We just won a major victory in the Tennessee legislature, stopping a program called Region Smart. This plan was to combine appointed regional councils and to cover multiple states. This was Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, and Tennessee. We led the activists, local activists, to pound on the state legislatures, and they pulled it out of all 3 states. They killed the bill. And what I was really shocked about, this was their test to move it across the country. Now you've got one right here, Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana, and that's the next one. And we've got to stop that one because you have one appointed regional council that will dictate everything in your lives, and your elected officials could go hang. These guys will make the decision. We used to call that communism. So, my next trip after today, I'm going to Boston, the center of oh my, everything there in place, the den of smart growth. And I'm going there to train locals how to fight back. Then I'm going to Iowa to work with farmers there to stop the CO2 pipeline. To win, we have to take the fight to the local and the state levels. The deep state cabal knows this. They know that the local level is where it must be fought. Too many of our people look at it and say, it's so huge, there's no way we can stop that. I have living proof of people who are doing it on the local level. And we're training them. It's what I call building a freedom pod in your community. If you can build this permanent infrastructure to protect your local businesses, to protect your private property, and protect individuals' personal choices in life, you have created a freedom pod. And if you do that and you're successful, other communities will say, how did you do that? What can we do? And it begins to grow. It's happening in Louisiana right now. I have the greatest bunch in Louisiana I've ever seen, and they are accomplishing this, and other cities are now starting to say, how do we do this? City councils, county commissions, school boards, state legislatures have much more power than even they know. They can and they must stand up to federal overreach. You need to change the debate to attack anti-freedom policies, expose non-governmental organizations, there's carpetbaggers hiding in the shadows, dictating policy, forcing elected officials to be personally responsible. This is what you have to do. Make them personally responsible for their actions. And there are ways to do this. If you want to transform your community into a freedom pod, you must start from scratch. You must build that permanent infrastructure from which to carry on the fight. Then, every time the NGOs come up with a new plan, you won't be caught flat-footed. We're standing there, we're always going, do you hear about that new plan? What, did anybody know about this? By the time you ask all those questions, they've already got it in place. We need to be able to whack them every minute, the minute that they try to introduce it. Make your impact felt on current elected officials, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. If you want to win, you must change the debate and set the issues. And I'll tell you right now, even with all of these issues that are facing us, the most important issue right here today is election integrity. We must do everything possible to make sure that our election is honest, that every real vote is counted and every fraudulent one is thrown out, and we will make major strides forward. We can wipe these guys out in a single day if we could have a fair election across the country. I know these forces of tyranny are not a majority. They look like that because the news media is behind them. You got all these people in Congress and so forth, but there is massive forces from our side. We need to understand that. They are a minority and they are terrified that you will learn that. That's why I am motivated by the words of one of our best founding fathers, Sam Adams. He was the man most responsible for getting us into the American Revolution. And he said, "It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men." Ladies and gentlemen, that is our task.
Thank you.
Who's got a question? Who's got a question for Tom? Please, questions, not comments, if you can. Questions.
We have one here.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, Tom, thank you. That was awesome. By the way, election integrity, it is pronounced in 2 syllables, John Adams on Tuesday.
Yep.
John Adams, spread the word. But real quick question, I did not hear the S word much, socialism. I came in really worried about socialism. Now I'm terrified because I know they're out there just about everywhere. So how does the Great Reset relate to socialism and the socialists?
Socialism is too weak a word. This is communism. That's what it is. They haven't changed the playbook in one single comma. They are putting exactly into place what they did to take the Soviet Union, to take Cuba, to, on and on and on. And this whole thing about, using the environment as the fear tactic to keep us voluntarily. Every time I talk about that, what I really picture is the Trojan horse, in Troy, that they're pulling that inside, and we all go, oh, great. But no, socialism is weak communism.
Can I ask you, Tom?
Yeah.
You've heard about the food processing plants that are being burned down. What is your knowledge of that? Can you tell us anything that we don't already know?
I'm sorry, what was the first part?
Food processing plants,
Yeah.
like 22 of them or something like that?
It's really interesting. I was on a radio show, VCY America, the other day, and a lady called in and asked about that. And neither I nor Jim Snyder, the host that I was working with, had ever heard of it. I hung up the phone and all of a sudden it was everywhere. That is really suspicious. Was it 2 airplanes have run into plants, and is it like 18 plants that have burned down? That didn't just happen.
Question right here.
Yeah.
Hi. I actually heard you back in, I think, 2016, 17, and you talked quite a bit about Agenda 21. And you mentioned a little bit today about the high rises, and we're getting rid of all of the single family homes, and we're all going to be herded into places where we can be more controlled, and the bike paths were going to be coming, and that's why there's not going to be any cars, because we have to walk and we have to bike everywhere. So where exactly does all that of Agenda 21 that is obviously gone, is that now 2030 or is that now 2050?
Yeah. Agenda 21 isn't gone. It's all the same plan.
But we're not.
So it's,
We're on 22. I thought the whole point of Agenda 21 is that this was all supposed to be happening last year.
Well, yeah, they make their 10-year plans or their 20-year plans, and they do. And when it doesn't work, then they'll come out with this new thing. That keeps their troops excited. Oh, we got a new one, a new one. There's nothing new in Agenda 2030 that wasn't really in Agenda 21. And the Green New Deal is exactly the same thing. They're just getting more honest and more open about what it is.
Very quickly,
Yeah.
my husband is saying that I'm a total twit because I don't know what I'm talking about. And he keeps saying, look at all these houses that are being built, these single family homes. Why do the developers keep building all these homes if we're really not going to be doing that anymore?
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, they're just starting this effort and to really take the zoning protections away. Baltimore, an area, Minneapolis is another area that started doing that. You've got the state of Oregon was the first one that actually had it from a state level to begin to push it. They start out, they have to test, they have to push it a little bit slowly, and then they start to expand it. And that's what they're doing now. So that's, you know, you're seeing the two systems conflict.
Here we have a question right here.
So these climate credits that corporations are buying to then say they're neutral, they're carbon neutral. So how does that fit in the climate credits they're buying, and who is getting rich off of that?
Who's getting rich off of it? I really can't answer that. I don't know, but I do know that it's all done to control your buying habits, to control how you fall into place here. Now take a look and talk about who's getting rich off of it. Take a look at what happened in the pandemic. Thousands of private local businesses went out of business, shut down, but the global corporations, Amazon, Walmart, Target, had the best year of their life. And that's really kind of the answer to that, I think.
Tom, we have a question in the back.
Yeah.
Hi, Tom. Thank you so much for your presentation. My name is Heston Park and I live in Cincinnati. And the newsletter we got today from the Westchester Tea Party said that this Agenda 21 plan has been implemented in Cincinnati. And so how do we fight it on a local level? Where do we start?
Yeah. First of all, you have to do your research. And that's what my manual back there is what this is all about, of how to do these things. But you have to know your enemy before you can start to fight. And you need to do it quietly. The first thing you do is take a look at the comprehensive development plan for your community. It will have all these details in it. You can begin to find out what grants they've taken. Let me just give you a real quick demonstration of what happens here, what you don't realize. Your elected officials on city council, county commission, and so forth are surrounded by these NGO groups. Every policy that you see, bike paths, controls on energy, on and on and on, all of these things have at least one NGO that's an expert in that. And they know exactly how to present it, and they know exactly what federal grant to go for to do it. And they put this pressure on. They come in and say, hey, got the new thing right here for you. It's all in a box. Got the money for you too. They help write the grant programs. Sierra Club, Nature Conservancy, these groups help write them. They know exactly. They put Agenda 21 policies in there. My hometown is Newark, Ohio. And we have this courthouse in the center of town and the square that goes around it. And there is obviously infrastructure there. There's pipes, there's wires and so forth, over 100 years old. And they were starting to go bad. So they applied for a grant from the EPA. And the EPA said, oh yeah, we'll give you the money for that. And into the grant was also, you're going to put a roundabout on each corner of the square to get rid of those traffic lights. People sitting there cause climate change. Yeah, they now have traffic circles all over town.
Here's a question right here.
Yeah.
I'm Greg Howard. You're mentioning a lot about people who believe in sustainability. Have you ever mentioned a sustainable budget?
That's beyond their ability to understand that kind of sustainability. They keep stealing our words. It's words that mean something. The most sustainable people in the country are farmers. If they were destroying the land, the environment, they'd be out of business overnight. If the timber industry was clear cutting like they charge them of doing, they'd be out of business overnight. They have managed to be in business for hundreds of years because they're sustainable. They plant over here while they're taking down over here. The most obvious picture I ever saw to bring this to light Remember when Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980? There was a photograph that showed the side of Mount St. Helens and all these trees dead laying on the side. Photograph taken 20 years later, put a line in. This side over here was government land, and this side over here was forest industry land. Trees were all growing up over here. Over here, they were all still dead. That's what they do. I could go into hours to tell you about how they are creating these forest fires because they will not allow the cleaning out of dead trees. That's natural, you understand. What they have now is 8 feet of kindling on the floor. Little animals can't even get through it. And that's why the forest fires are burning much faster than they ever did before. So these are just some examples. Nothing they propose helps the environment. It is all just to fake you out and bring you in.
We've got a question in the back.
Yeah.
Question in the back, Tom.
My first name's Bill. Are they going to force cremation because the cemeteries are taking up too much space?
It's interesting you asked that because I have seen photographs and so forth of what they want to do with, with cemeteries and so forth. And I think they've even got plans for those ashes.
Here's a question right here.
Yeah.
Okay, so they want us to be herded into high concentration areas where we have hundreds of people in a very small space. What happens when we have another pandemic? Because at that point, it'll spread like wildfire. There'll be a spike and the deaths would be astronomical. Can we attack them with that information?
Let me tell you this. When I started talking about Agenda 21 in the beginning, 30 years ago, I knew that one of the major parts of it that it was calling for was a massive reduction in the population. I didn't talk about that very much because I was having enough trouble getting people to understand the threat to their property. If I started saying they want to wipe out 6 billion people, I got thrown out of enough rooms, and but all of a sudden in this last couple of years, that has become the center of everything that they're doing, and cutting back on the population and so forth. But they want to move every people off the rural areas, get them into the cities. Let me tell you this, you talk about hypocrisy. Here they say we all got to move into the cities and live in these high rises and smart growth, they call it. I got by chance a copy of a training manual for the Black community in churches, telling them that because they have been forced to live in the cities, their lifestyle expectancy is much lower than these people who can live in these single family neighborhoods. Now, wait a minute. They're moving all of us into the cities for the environment, but all of a sudden for them, it is, it's dangerous to their health. These are all lies. They tell them constantly, whatever group they're talking to sucker them in, and now we can move over to this other group.
Got one last question in the back, Tom, right there.
Hi, my name is Maureen, and I'm a nurse, 29 years now. And I've spent the last 2 years helping people recover from COVID, get people out of the hospitals, try to save people, trying to educate people about what they can do to help themselves. What can us nurses, I see the nurses as maybe if we can get enough of us rounded up and on the same page, maybe we can help save a lot more people. What in your opinion can us nurses do or us medical professionals do to help with this endeavor?
I think it's really the same thing that I'm telling other people to do in different things in their communities. You have got to join together. You have got to put out the truth, not be silenced, and point fingers at who's telling you. If you've been handed a memo that says this is what you have to do, and you know full well that's nuts, get it out there, get it in front of people, make them the center of it. This person is lying to you, and begin to put that pressure on them. I have seen it happen across the country that when people do that, then they back off. They don't want a spotlight on them, And that's why they try to discredit me as much as they can, because I'm just a nutcase. And, so we can just move on. But if you can, tell the truth, you are in a position that you are seeing things from the inside that the rest of us don't see. We need to get that information out, and you need to unite behind it. And there's a possibility it can cost you your job, but it's going to anyway, because the health system is being corrupted in a massive way, and it's all just government bureaucrats. And that has got to stop. We need to take it back and have American health system that does heal people, not one that's a danger to them.
Let's thank our guest tonight. Tom, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate all your comments. Thank you. Just a few housekeeping things that I wanted to share with you before we leave tonight. So I forgot to mention one person who's been a huge help to Betty and I this semester, and that's Leanne Cartier, who's in the audience right there. Could you give her a round of applause? She's been a big help. Sheriff Peterson, when the Westchester Tea Party comes to one of these events and starts bringing fake burgers, I'm going to turn you away and say no more. Once again, thanks to everybody who brought food. Thank you. So I just have a comment about, you may have seen the news about a Lakota school board member that faced some issues today when she was censured. And something very, very almost identical. If everybody could keep it quiet for just a minute. I can't hear you. In the back, please. In the back, please. Thank you. But the new Lakota school board member, one of the three that turned that board, was censored today by their own board, and for being too strong. I just encourage you to keep an open mind about her. I watched this exact same thing happen when a conservative school board member in Kings, Kim Grant, took over. She was harassed, she was booed, she was targeted just for trying to do the right thing. And I've spent some time with Darby, and I think her intentions are good, and I wish her well. With respect to Empower You, I've got good news for you. If you don't feel like you've studied enough this semester, we're going to have a summer school session. It'll start in the middle of June. There will be 6 to 8 classes, and we will hope to see you then. And if you're out this summer, our next semester will start September 20th. For those of you who came to see Vivek Ramaswamy last week, he's got an article in the Wall Street Journal yesterday about his thoughts on the takeover, the Twitter takeover by Elon Musk. I encourage you to read that. It's always thought out. We talked about smart meters a little bit, and I'm pleased to tell you that one of our summer sessions will include a session on smart meters. So I encourage you to make sure you're here for that. And with that in mind, is anybody other than me? So one of the things I learned the most about is a guy by the name of Jordan Peterson. His picture's back there on the wall. He's coming to the Taft Theater on May the 20th. It is going to be an incredible lecture. My son was kind enough to buy me tickets to it. If any of you decide to go down and really open your eyes at that session and want to go out for a little happy hour before, please send me a note. I'd love to join you. It will be a great night. That's May the 20th. It's a Friday night down at the Taft. Other than that, I just encourage you to take Tom's words and everything you've learned with all your friends here tonight. Go out and empower you. And thank you so much for coming tonight. Have a great night.